What is up, sexy people? It is Dave. It is Duncan. We are back for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Norwegian prog band Opeth. The band's new album, Approbation, will be released on June 16th via InsideOut Music. So,
I was going to say go and spell the band's name, but I suddenly realised anywhere that anyone is consuming this, whether it's on YouTube or via some podcatcher or something, it is written there, so
yes.
No excuses for spelling mistakes here, even if I'm fairly sure in the Norwegian tongue it's pronounced a bit better than what we will do on this recording.
Yes, I'm assuming the V's are used. What I could find online, it said that it was pronounced Opeth. So we'll go with that.
Which is my ideal slice of bread. It's all crust. Oh, crust. Yes. No middle of the loaf here, Dave.
No, not at all. What the ends. So, debut full-length album from Opeth.
How? How is that a debut? Please tell me they were in 40 bands before.
I'm assuming they must be. This was written at a small cabin deep in the Norwegian forests, Duncan.
Is it the cabin from the
woods?
picture on the... No, not in the woods. Like from the front cover? Because the front cover is just a wee cabin.
Could be. Doesn't clarify, but it could be. Forged in childhood 2 decades ago, Duncan. Opeth began with a simple promise between two friends. Simon and Martin grew up in Norway, surrounded by music. Their fathers played together in a band. Duly inspired, the young duo made a pact that when they were old enough, they would follow suit and embark on their own musical journey together.
Their pacts are much better than mine. My pacts at high school were, if you're not married and I'm not married, by the time we're 35, I'll give you a handy. You know what I mean? I wish I'd just funneled that into, by the way, that's not why I got married before I was 35.
Shit.
We need to do it now. No, that's cool. I like that. that.
In the summer of 2021, the pact would finally come to fruition. We didn't even know what genre this would be. We just started to make music together, says Simon. It all came extremely naturally, and after 6 weeks in the cabin, an album was more or less formed. We booked a studio to record the drums properly and laid down some synths as well. Then we started playing with the idea of actually releasing the music because, to be honest, we didn't have a plan at all in the beginning. We just wrote whatever came to us, inspired by everything we grew up with and all the music we were surrounded by. With such intriguing depths for listeners to explore, the Approbation needed a thematic core to match. As Simon explains, Opeth's debut tells the story of a man languishing in extreme isolation and the thoughts that battle to crowd his mind as he contemplates oblivion. An absorbing blend of darkness and light, the Approbation digs deep into the very essence of humanity. It's kind of a concept album where you follow this main character who is isolated in a cabin far away from civilization. He's left on his own with his mind and all his thoughts, trying to find approval or acceptance of death, knowing that his time to leave Earth is near. We've tried to capture the feeling of fall/winter, the cold days with rain and snow, the sound of the wind, and the train that goes by on the other side of the river every other hour, making a horn sound to scare whatever animals are near the train tracks, and hearing those echoes from all the mountains that surround the cabin. Hopefully we can take the listener on this journey to the cabin and drag them into the story so that they feel what we felt being there. So, Duncan...
drag us into the story, not into the basement.
Yes, never the basement.
Never the basement.
New band, no previous releases, nothing to compare this to.
6 weeks.
6 weeks, Duncan. 6 weeks.
Which was the original title of the Bare Naked Ladies single about this album, but then changed it to the breakup over a week, which was more palatable.
Right.
This is why I don't read the blurb, but sometimes I feel like I should read the blurb. My level of appreciation just went up about 3 notches from everything you've just said there.
Yeah. It turns out, like, for a couple of guys that have just decided to start writing music and put together an album in 6 weeks. Sounds like they might be onto something here, Duncan.
I'm assuming they were accomplished musicians beforehand.
No,
I'm assuming they weren't going
just
like that.
learned them for this album.
What is this instrument? A guitar. I don't think I've ever played this before.
What way does this go?
You know, like,
Did I just play this on my lap, or how do I hold this? Yeah, like, this is really fucking good. I really enjoyed this. I'm going to get that right out at the front here. I really enjoyed this album. And I'll try and put into words what I enjoyed about it, since this is a review. So I think...
I will explain how I enjoyed this particular album through the form of interpretive dance.
Through clap. I'll tell you what I really liked. I really liked the blend of kind of retro and modern on this. At times it had this like kind of old time kind of prog feel, like the chord choices.
The chords. Play those chords.
Oh, this review has just gone downhill. The chord choices, the melodies, the kind of old time kind of organ sound, even the kind of the sprawling length of some of the tracks, but they couple that like 70s 80s kind of prog side with something more contemporary, where it gets a little heavier in places, and the level of kind of technicality comes up, and the style probably feels more akin to like something released in the last kind of 5-10 years. Sound wise, because of that kind of like blend of prog eras, you've got everything from like maybe like King Crimson to like even more modern bands like Leprous, and this is super weird, but I'm pretty sure last week, it wasn't even on recording, just when we were chatting, you mentioned Porcupine Tree.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I hadn't even picked this album to review at that point, but I was getting hints of Porcupine Tree on this album, and then out of the prog world, they're still kind of in the prog world a little bit. You've got a serious streak of Opeth in there, like that is, you'll hear that a lot throughout the album, and it's definitely in the kind of heavier side of their sound. Also, this is just a weird thing I picked up on. I was getting like a latter day era Silverchair in some of the more peaceful moments, both musically and vocally at times. The first track after the kind of intro track, The Pale Moon, I was getting real kind of Daniel Johns vibes vocally for me, but not the grunge Daniel Johns, the like kind of neon ballroom diorama kind of era, that kind of sound where his voice was a bit smoother. The Ockrust vocalist Simon, he has this fantastic tone, like
silk,
beautiful
like
tone,
silk across the eardrum. It is so fucking smooth. It is unbelievable.
Yeah, his range is incredible. I loved the choice of melodies, but then I'm assuming that's him that does all the vocals. It's also got this more kind of like deathly kind of rasp as well. Where
was it track 4, The Great White River, has a section of kind of blackened inspired vocals, but it's kind of that. Not like you're like, when I say blackened vocals, I'm not talking like Mayhem or anything like that, but that way where you get like, you just put a bit of rasp and a bit of bass in your voice, kind of full black metal, so to speak. And it's fucking great as well. Totally works.
Absolutely. And I think when that first track finished, I was like, right, okay, I am fucking super excited to hear where this goes, because dynamically they cover so much on that first main track. They hit all the bases on it.
You ain't seen nothing yet, bitch.
Yeah, no. And then the album continues to kind of unfold, giving you more and more of this band's personality, and kind of showing you that they're not just like a one-trick prog pony here. They can do the staccato riffs, the proggy rhythms, the winding prog melodies, but I love the fact that they could also just turn up the heat and deliver this more kind of gutsy side of their sound with a bit of heaviness in the guitars and vocals. And I think they balance the balance between those elements is great. They don't overdo anything. I never felt like they prolonged anything too much to the point that it became uninteresting. There's always something going on, even if it's like a subtle change here in the synths or like a bit of lead work. There was always something catching my ear on this album. But it didn't go into like that kind of wanky prog kind of, just where it goes too far. I'm not a fan of these bands that just kind of start to kind of love the sound of their own instruments too much and feel the need to fill every single gap with something.
Yeah, like when a band's like that, you know what this album needs? A 5-minute theremin solo.
Yeah.
That's when you're like, does it though?
Yeah,
does it actually? Or
Yeah.
or was it just sitting in the corner and you decided to experiment?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like there is a difference between writing something for the song and writing something for yourself.
Absolutely. So this was super interesting to listen to, but I like the fact that they will quite happily pull back as well and just let a really good melody kind of work its magic. I think the Great White River is a really good example of that, where the verse is proggy, but the rhythm isn't too disjointed. It still has a groove to it, but the chorus is dead simple, but it's really effective. It has its moments where they push the sound, with a bit more depth. But I think that track works particularly well in the middle of that, like middle of the album spot, where it kind of does allow you to reset. They transition into Arcane Clouds,
Such
and the transition is so cool. I missed it the first time I heard it, but I think it was my second listen. Right at the end, as it's transitioning, there's a radio comes in, and it's like the sound of someone tuning like a manual radio, so it's going through like static noise and stuff, and then you start to hear like a riff starting to come through in the static, and then it kind of like bleeds right into the next track, which was really cool. It was a really clever idea. It was a nice kind of like shift into the next phase of the album, and that Arcane Clouds, it gives you more of that warmth that you got. Nice like retro keys, with a bit more of a kind of proggy kind of playfulness to it, and a bit more like complexity in the arrangement. There was a little bit of almost like the contortionist in the kind of cleaner side, or the kind of more mellow side, which I actually really liked. And I think these guys, they do have that kind of similar kind of refinement in their delivery. They mentioned in the press release of trying to capture that kind of feeling of fall or winter, and I totally got that. Like there are moments that are, for me, I found there was a lot of moments that sounded very fall-like. It's an album that, and some people will get what I'm saying here, other people are like, what is he talking about? But it gives off a lot of colour, this album. A lot of yellows and kind of burnt orange colours coming through. Some people will just be thinking, you need to see someone quickly because I don't know what you're talking about, but others will be like, yeah, I totally get that. And then there are parts of the album which are slightly colder in atmosphere, especially around the end of the album, so I totally got the kind of seasonal thing that we're talking about. The last, I want to kind of just talk about the last two tracks, because
collectively together they're 23 minutes long.
Yes, they are a more typical prog length, both like 10 minutes plus, and increase the level of prog noodliness, if that's a word. I think I would say there is
I'll have that with a chili base, please. So you've got ramen, udon, and prog. Your three thickness of noodles.
Prog noodliness. I would say there is a tonal shift around that part of the album. It's not quite as conventional in the arrangement. Definitely more elaborate. Lots of kind of detours down these kind of like proggy rabbit holes. It kind of reminded me of the Messiah Complex section of Virus by Haken. It had that type of like grandiosity to it. But with this being probably a little bit more traditional in style, it's not as like genty as Haken. But unlike the Messiah Complex, I enjoyed this much more. I didn't really get that. This I totally got. It has some really, really nice moments, a lot of nice ebb and flow moments. There are certain motifs that they'll repeat, so it doesn't feel like it's like wandering too far away. And again, I think Simon sounds fucking amazing, like brilliant vocals, a really warm, appealing tone, but it's backed up with these really clever harmonies throughout the kind of final piece of the album. The last track, I like the transition from that acoustic kind of dreamy intro into this more like electronic, more kind of metallic streak, even down to the vocal effects that they use.
Yeah, like you're about 3 minutes into it, and there's like a dirty hip hop beat.
Yeah,
What? has the switch to the next album.
Yeah, I know. Again, like as you say, it's like another shift, another kind of tonal shift on the album that I'm assuming is supposed to be the kind of maybe the approval stage of the storyline. But it took me a couple of listens to appreciate it, just because it's a little different to the rest of the album. It's also 13 minutes long, but I ended up really enjoying the kind of development of that track. And I think it's probably one of the most rewarding things I found about this album is that you feel the album change with the narrative. Like you can kind of immerse yourself in that. I feel like it's giving you an album of great music, great musicianship, and a production that's warm and fitting of their style, but also has a concept that works with the music and gives you something else to dissect or even reflect on. I think this is just really well done. I think I can see myself sticking this on when I'm in the mood for something long form and a bit more kind of sophisticated. With my pipe and slippers, you know what I mean? Listening to this prog noodle in this evening. Don't bother me. I think it is probably best listened to as a whole piece as well. I think if you listen to a couple of tracks, you'll probably only get part of the reward. I think it's well worth your time listening to the whole thing. And if there's anything else I could say is check out the videos that they've released. They released a video for The Pale Moon and for Arcane Clouds, and they are fucking unbelievably good, like really well shot, almost movie-like. And there's definitely some kind of metaphoric kind of images and stuff in there as well that you'll pick up on, but I thought they were really good, so check them out. But yeah, I thought this was really good, like a really, really impressive album. What do you think, D-Man? What you saying about this?
So I made a statement.
Oh,
I like making statements. I like making statements. Although, like on an aside now, I think you should buy a boat and call it like the Prog Noodle. I just think like Big Davy, like calling into shore aboard the Prog Noodle. Permission to dock. So I made a bold statement when we were reviewing. You already mentioned the band Haken with their album Fauna. I was like, listen, this is about as good as prog gets. In 2023, and I don't think much gonna be touching it. And then Ogre Crust, can't pronounce the name, Ocrust. Ocrust came in, which might mean August. Do we think that means August? It's very similar to August, which makes me think of the fall, Dave. I don't know. Ocrust came in out of nowhere. And this was the last album I listened to. Right. And I only started listening to it yesterday. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know why. I think probably the length initially was like, yeah, we're not doing 50 minutes today. We're not doing 50 minutes. But I had to work away. And I had essentially like a 4-hour commute on a train yesterday. And I was like, yeah, well, see, I'm between watching some movies here. And doing work, if anyone from work is and doing like hard earned work. I'm gonna swing in some music here. I'm gonna catch up with what I should have been catching up with for tomorrow's recording. And I put this on, and I'll tell you, I put this on at the point that my train was delayed 45 minutes because someone got hit on the tracks. Which you would think would make me feel guilty, only did after I'd moaned for about 25 minutes, and then the news came out that someone had been hit in the tracks. I was like, I feel like a bad person, but still. And those like that kind of 40-minute delay evaporated from me while I was listening to this album. I kind of lost like all sense of space-time existence. And in a lot of respects, very few albums do that to me. Like enthrall me and encapsulate me so much with what they're doing that I kind of lose like contact with the world, almost incommunicado, so to speak. And I think the only one that's done it in recent memory is 40 Watt Sun. And actually, in a lot of ways, shapes and forms, this reminds me a little bit of that because it's a mood piece. I think this album is a mood piece in the best possible way. I think I was rewarded by sitting where I was at the time I first put on with no distractions, nothing else going on, with the ability to just focus on the music. And by the time I got to the end of the album, the initial first question, which you've answered from the blurb, was, right, so what album are we on with these guys? Like 7 or 8 or something? Like, because it just felt so accomplished, so well written, that I just thought, right, we're dealing with veterans here. I didn't realise this was essentially a dare. You know what I mean? Like that. Which makes it even more impressive. The mastering of not only the styles of music that they play, but the song composition is nothing short of kind of jaw-dropping. For a debut, it doesn't make sense. It is so confidently put together. And like you mentioned, that they are dealing with styles that are sometimes adjacent, so the transition's not that difficult. But then they're mixed in elements that you wouldn't necessarily kind of, once again, like throwing names of bands that we haven't already mentioned. It's like that way when I heard Four Stroke Baron 2 years ago, and I heard their album Classics. And I was listening to it, and on paper I should not like that album, but I still listen to that album religiously. I think it's fucking awesome. But it's another one that looked in things that shouldn't work, but the way they utilised them, especially in the synth work, just made it sound great. The synth work on this album is very easy to sleep on. It's fucking impressive. Like very, very, very impressive, because it's varied and they utilise it in at least 3 different forms. One, in its own right as almost a lead instrument. 2, as a kind of backing to what the vocals are doing, which is like a completely different use. It's more a supporting character. If it was an Oscar, it'd be the supporting actor or actress. And then the last way they utilise it is to actually add character and quirk to what you're listening to. And those 3 approaches require 3 different styles of writing. So it's not just that they're playing metal guitars and playing folk style guitars and doing proggy sections, and they're then taking an instrument which was the afterthought, like they say, that came in afterwards, and then utilising it in a way that's just really proficient and really, really clever and just excellent. And so, like, I listen to that as I pull out my headphones. I listen to that, and I'm dumbstruck by how clever it is. Yeah. And then that's before I even start talking about the songs. I think the biggest credit to this one is that it does save the massive proggy bit to the end. It follows a very conventional setup through the first 2 tracks anyway, with Osterdalen into the Pale Moon. What you're getting from those 2 songs is the conventional quiet introduction into the kind of 70s proggy like opening track. Isolation kicks in, and it's a band we've not mentioned yet, but instantly sprung to mind with all the guitar work at the beginning was Mastodon. I just kind of like that just reminded me of Crack the Sky. And Isolation goes on in isolation for quite a while before the vocals kick in. You're almost 2/3 into the song before a wee vocal hook kicks in. And to be honest with you, I wasn't missing the vocals not being in the track. Sometimes I feel like with songs like that, I'm like, commit one or the other. But once again, it just goes to show that they're so confident in their songwriting. The vocals only need to actually come in when they need to come in, and not because convention tells them it should have come in earlier. The opening 3 tracks are great, and there's no doubt about that at all. The album shifts gear in the back 4 tracks, which are like pound for pound some of the best prog you're going to hear this year. The Great White River is fucking incredible, because it's the one that maybe carries the most mix of extremity in their sound. Certainly it has the heaviest parts that you hear on any of the other ones, but the clean sections throughout the very kind of folk style verse and chorus are just fucking so beautiful. It's vocally, this just annihilates me. It absolutely annihilates me. And then, like you say, it transitions smoothly, like smooth as a baby's arse, right into the Arcane Cloud, which is a fucking gorgeous song to listen to. It's layered, it's lovely, it's beautiful, it paints pictures. It paints like the sort of pictures you get on the album cover, that kind of watercolor brush stroke, just fucking amazing. And it adds a different element. So if you imagine the first 3 tracks being like the opening gambit, the opening chapter, Chapter 2 is 4 and 5. And then you get the closing chapter, Anodyne and Approbation, which are essentially one long song. The reason I know that is because in Anodyne, the lyrics are already singing about approbation before that track even kicks in. So it's linking it in thematically and lyrically. And the Anodyne has some of the coolest synths. Really layered kind of almost choral sort of vocals as well. It's just like fucking mind melting. And by the end of that song, which once again transitions into Approbation, I was kind of sitting there going like that, this could be the perfect closer. So if I finished that track 6, I'd be like, fucking yes, well done. Like, round of applause, you've job done. And then the Approbation comes in, which is probably the song that has the most quirk out of all of them. You mentioned it before, has kind of weird electronic, almost hip-hop style drums for a section. It has like that kind of classic 80s guitar solo work in the midsection, which is like it's doing all that shit. Has tons of, once again, synths adding like that's the quirky elements, like just all the staccato stuff that's all piling in together.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like it's taking you on the, wait for it, journey as it transitions, weaves and winds and builds its way through. And it keeps like adding this layer of uncertainty until it breaks out at the end. And it is the perfect crescendo to the best build-up.
Yeah.
It is such a fucking good album. It's like it's almost hurting my brain at how good it is for even that's before we even talk about it. Like my score is even more remarkable that it's a debut. Yeah, I mean this is formidably good.
Yeah.
And you would like to think these guys would have always done something musically, even if it wasn't together. But their partnership, it's a debut and it doesn't feel overcooked in any way, which doesn't make sense. That your debut album is where you throw everything against the wall and it doesn't all stick. It's usually the most extreme version of yourself because you're trying to, this might be the only chance we get to do it, so we give everything. This one is so measured. Like across the board. Like there's nothing on here that I feel like, you know, if it just wasn't for that 5 seconds, every choice, every element, every twist, turn, nook, cranny, if you're in Scotland, is just perfectly placed. It might be my favourite prog album this year. It does things that the Haken album doesn't do. They're two different albums. One is much more modern and clean. You're right. In this one, you're getting 70s and 80s styled stuff juxtaposed with kind of the sort of prog music, which isn't like technically gent, are going out its way to be heavy, but just kind of modern stuff. There's elements of Oscilloid in here, you know, it's like kind of earthy, organic way. And that's before we even talk about the production, which I don't even know if you did, Dave.
Briefly mentioned it, but not in any detail, but it's
fucking
stunning.
Perfect. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Like every nuance, every instrument is captured perfectly. And the last thing you mentioned, the vocals. Oh, like smooth as silk, and I shit you not, that this guy's vocals are fucking incredible. Just amazing, and the choice of melody, it's I think we know where I'm landing, Dave, is what I'm saying, but it's sometimes fun to take people up the garden path to get there. It's an exceptionally good album, and this is the one that I might be screaming about a lot when we come to do our mid-year lists in terms of do not sleep on this album, because I imagine people are going to hear Norwegian prog and probably switch off. And they shouldn't. It's worth your time for sure. And I'll be spinning this a lot this year. I'm still spinning that Haken album. I think it's fucking great. So it's time to put that one down for a wee while and start spinning something else.
Nice. Awcrust. What we're thinking for scores on this one? Duncan's like, what? You need to ask me.
Did we even or just fire off the graphic, Dave?
I found this one tricky.
Tricky because there's not a grade above a 5.
No, because every time I heard it, it got better. Every time I heard it, I was like, there was something else that I liked more about it each time I listened to it. And it kind of reveals itself even more every time you hear it. There's something else you'll pick up on. And then the first listen, I was like, okay, that's really good. Maybe the choruses could have a bit more of a hook to them. But then even now, like at like 4 or 5 listens in, they are starting to really like get into my head. The melodies are in there, so they are starting to really work their magic. And then I was like, oh, well, is it as good as Haken? Because I was just automatically going to that prog album.
To me, that's the exemplar prog album of the year thus far. So,
but I came to the same conclusion in that they are 2 different prog albums that are both prog, but it's totally stylistically different. And then I was like, but this is a debut, man, and Haken are there after how many albums, and these guys have just dropped this.
Also, they did go to a cabin as well. We should just start recording from a cabin. I think that's the gift to releasing great things is just go away to the cabin for 6 weeks. I'm sure the families and the wives will.
Spotify will start throwing Joe Rogan money at us after that. We're recording a cabin, Spotify. Oh, let's sign these guys up. 100 million. I thought I had like my score all sorted. And I'd like thought of the albums we were reviewing this week. I had all my notes and all my scores, and I was like, right, I think I've got it. And then I listened to this album again today. I wasn't planning on listening to any of those albums again, but I wanted to go back to it. And that's when I was like, this is really fucking good. Like, I'm going to want to keep coming back to this for the rest of the year. And I've already like spun it to death this week, but I still was wanting to listen to it again today. Really nothing negative to say about it, to be honest. It's a fucking awesome album, and you should really be checking this out. And I agree with you. I think it is going to fly under the radar somewhat, but I hope people check this out, and I hope people give it a chance. So I said last week, I'm not giving out any more 5s because I keep dropping a 5 every week, and then here I am again, dropping another 5. Yeah, 5 from me. Duncan?
There's no way, shape or form I can't give this a fucking 5. I'd be a dickhead if I did. It's great. I don't know what else. Like, they even managed to. Here's a little wink and a credit to them. They even managed on the approbation at the end when it's all leveling out. There is a specific choice of synth instrument and sound which is very indicative of, and this is me going into the weeds. Hold on to me, Dave, so I don't get lost.
Okay.
I'm a huge Duran Duran fan. I've been since I was a kid. All like just fucking geeky about them at times, like needlessly geeky. A lot of people don't know Duran Duran before Simon Le Bon. Well, before they became Duran Duran, they were technically Duran Duran, but they were a prog band in the late 70s. And that's why on all their albums we've got that one song where you're like that. Not just slap the bass, sing about girls shaking their tits, and give us some you got to find this time. You know, like just do it that way, Simon.
Yeah.
But they would always do like a kind of proggy song.
Yeah.
Like Night Train, stuff like that. And they would always have like the keyboard player would always play this kind of, and it always kind of felt like not quite Middle Eastern, but kind of like the whole section at the end of the operation. Like that's I was like fucking hairs in the back of my neck. I was like, this is the real shit.
Yeah.
So the fact that they can make me think of fucking like blackened tinges on the vocals, like bands like Mastodon, like throughout like a plethora of bands, and then at the end leave me thinking about Duran Duran is worthy of all the 5s I can throw. I would say a great accompanying album to this one, and another one that flies under the radar, and I mention it all the time. These 2 experimental musicians dubbed themselves Jogger and released an album like 2009 that no one fucking talks about, but it's a fucking bizarre piece of kind of electronic prog is the way I would describe it. And it made me want to listen to that as well. Like, it accompanies very well, even though they don't sound anything alike. I think they're 2 people write music as well, which just made me think of that. Like, it's just it's so fucking good. It's so is effortlessly good, and Ocrust are now 100% on my radar. Norway ain't that far, lads. Get over here. And yeah, these guys are album one. These guys are contenders. I think we are going to be hearing about them for a long fucking time. I don't even think we've hit anything. Imagine what happens once they go out and start gigging and get a bit of like that behind them.
Yeah.
What the next thing's going to sound like.
Yeah, it's super impressive. I think even the fact that they've got this storyline running through it that connects so well with the music on a first try, like you nailed that. And
concept albums are difficult because I think there's always a compromise when you do a concept album that you have to put the heavy song in, even though the story isn't necessarily heavy, because you want to keep the fans. Like this one, it works. Yeah, it works so well. It's fucking great. Yep,
guys, Scotland, it's on the map.
We fucking love you. Absolutely love you.
Come here, please.
We're closer. We're closer than the rest of the UK.
Yeah. Forget all those other places. Scotland is the place to be. So that is a review. This album drops on June 16th on InsideOut Music. Links below to the band, to the pre-order, all that sort of stuff. Check it out. Please check it out. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in. That is the review. Thanks for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.